Good evening, and welcome to our second Fall 2020 Virtual Executive Speaker Series event. My name is Dr. Nicole Coppell, and I'm the MBA Director. We're so proud of the success of our Virtual Executive Speaker Series. When COVID began last spring, we quickly pivoted, and the response has been phenomenal. Not only attracted interesting, relevant, and timely executive speakers from around the country, but we've been able to include so many more members of our Montclair State University community in our audience. In addition to MBA and other School of Business students, we welcome tonight prospective students, alumni, faculty, staff, representatives from the School Advisory Board, and members of the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation Meetup community to our audience. The format of this evening's session will be a short presentation by Carla Harris, followed by a fireside chat style interview and a Q&A session. Thank you to everyone who provided questions for Carla in advance, and we invite you to enter additional questions using the Q&A feature found on the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will do our best to have her answer as many of your questions as time permits. Once again, this has been a team effort on behalf of our MBA and Graduate Programs Office, Dean's Office, Development Officers, Alumni Relations, and the FS Bus technical team. I thank everyone for their contributions. At this point, I have the honor of introducing Faith Taylor, Acting Director of the Global Montclair Human Trafficking Initiative and a Professor of Marketing and Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability here in the Feliciano School of Business. And as many of you might remember, she herself was a past executive speaker. Faith will be introducing our featured guest speaker, Ms. Carla Harris, and facilitating the interview and Q&A session. Welcome.
Thank you, Nicole. And hi, everyone. I'm proud as a professor at Feliciano Business School to introduce my dear friend, Carla Harris. She was raised in Jacksonville, Florida, and she sang in a Baptist and Catholic church. From there, she went to Harvard undergrad and got an AB in economics, and then went on to get her MBA at Harvard Business School with second year's honor. Then she began her career at Morgan Stanley. And at Morgan Stanley, she is currently the Vice Chairman, Wealth Management Manager Director, and Senior Client Advisor at Morgan Stanley. She has had an incredible career there. She headed the Emerging Manager platform, the equity capital markets, equity private placements. And while she was there, she did several initial public offerings. And for a woman of her stature, it has been incredible. For UPS, Martha Stewart Living Omni Media, Ariba, and Redback, just to name a few. In addition to that, in August 2013, Carla was appointed by President Barack Obama to chair the National Women's Business Council. With her career, she has had an incredible trajectory, and she has also been recognized, but also has a very philanthropic side. And what I love about Carla is her authenticity, but also how she gives back to the community. So she has also been the co-chair of the National Social Action Commission of Delta Sigma Theta. She is a Link Sister, which I am also. She's been recognized by the Women of Power Award given by the National Urban League, as well as several other outstanding recognitions, such as Fortune magazine's list of the 50 most powerful Black executives in corporate America. Lastly, she also is a singer, and she has released several gospel albums that have done very well and have been a bestseller on Amazon.com and has had sold out concerts at Carnegie Hall. Now, if you think you don't have time, she has time. So most importantly, she has also given back through writing books. And two of her incredible books that have sold very well is Strategize to Win and Expect to Win, and talks about the pearls of wisdom during the pandemic. So I would love to welcome Carla Harris.
Well, thank you so much, Faith.
You're welcome.
And thank you for that amazing introduction. And good evening, the family of the Feliciano Business School. It is my honor to spend a few minutes with you talking about something I love, love, love talking about. I like to call them Carla's Pearls, my hard-earned and hard-learned pearls after being a woman on Wall Street as of this summer for 33 years. I dare say, ladies and gentlemen, that I have learned a few things about not only surviving, but more importantly, thriving in the seat that you sit in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. And frankly, that's what the pearls are all about. And as you heard from Faith, I've had the privilege of writing 2 books, Expect to Win and Strategize to Win. And when I first wrote Expect to Win, and it was released in 2009, everybody asked me, why did you write this book? Why did you write this book? Why were you so honest about everything that happened in your career? And I will tell you why. When I sat in your seats and I was walking out of the lauded halls of Harvard Business School, or even Harvard undergrad for that matter, every company that came to campus said, we are a meritocracy. All you have to do is be smart and work hard, put your head down, and you can go straight to the top in our organization. But when I started out in my career, it didn't quite work out that way. You see, I thought I was pretty smart. Magna cum laude, Harvard undergrad, second year honors, Harvard Business School, pretty smart, huh? I'm from the South, so I knew there were very few of the folks in the Northeast, which is where I was aiming my career, that could outwork me. And even 33 years into it, you cannot outwork Carla Harris. But I must tell you that combination of being smart and working hard did not equal maximizing my success. So I had to ask myself, what's missing in the success equation? And being the anal person that I am, I also went to the dictionary and I looked up the word meritocracy. And I don't care whose dictionary you go to. If you look up the word meritocracy, you will see the word objective somewhere in that definition. Yet, in all of our evaluative equations, there is a human element. And if there's a human element, by definition, there is a measure of subjectivity. So it cannot be 100% meritocratic. So the question is, what are those other things that really inform your success equation? And that's what the pearls are all about. Now, we are going to have a Q&A section after Faith and I get an opportunity to have a conversation. And I want to encourage you to ask anything that's on your mind. And I'll give you a challenge. There's no question that you can ask me where I cannot give you a prescriptive answer. And if you don't believe me, try me when we get to the Q&A. First pearl that I want to leave you with, it was the most important thing that I learned after 33 years on the street. So do not be fooled if you read Expect to Win and you see that it is chapter 4, because it is the most important thing that I learned. And that is, perception is the co-pilot to reality. How people perceive you will directly impact how they deal with you. Yes, the reality of how smart you are has something to do with your success equation. The reality of how hard you work has something to do with your success equation. But the most important part of your success equation is, how is the marketplace perceiving you? What lens are they looking through when they are looking at you? And if you want to maximize your success in the seat that you're in or the seat that you aspire to sit in, it is imperative that you understand the adjectives that are associated with success for the seat that you're in or the seat that you want to sit in. If you don't understand the adjectives that are associated with success, you can work really hard, but you won't maximize your success in that seat because you're working in a way that is inconsistent with the way they are thinking about success. If you would like to manage a large group of people, but you are not perceived as being motivational, inspirational, or organized, it doesn't matter that you can do it. It doesn't even matter that you did do it. You won't get the opportunity to do that if you are not perceived as such. If you would like to manage a large P&L, but you are not perceived as being analytical, quantitative, or strategic, doesn't matter that you can do it. Doesn't even matter that you did. You won't get the opportunity to do that if you are not perceived as such. Now, generally, when I say that, people say, but wait a minute, Carla, I am who I am. I can't make anybody think about me in a certain way. If you remember nothing else about our time together tonight, remember that you can train people to think about you in the way that you want them to think about you. And how do you do that? You think of 3 adjectives that you would like people to use to describe you when you are not in the room. And why do I say when you're not in the room? Is because all of the important decisions about your career will be made when you are not in the room. Compensation decisions will be made when you are not in the room. Promotion decisions will be made when you are not in the room. And new assignments will be given out when you are not in the room. So how do you want people to describe you when you're not in the room? Pick 3 adjectives that are absolutely consistent with who you really are. I'm a big fan of the authenticity point, and we're going to talk about that tonight. But however, pick 3 adjectives that are also valued in that organization. And if you don't know what's valued in the organization, you can go to the organization's website. There isn't a company or an organization that doesn't describe itself or its values on the website. And if they don't, and you're already there, think about what they told you when they hired you. Oh, Faith, we hired you for the following 3 reasons. Jeffrey, you beat out these 2 candidates for these 4 reasons. They told you then what they valued about you. So the trick is to continue to improve upon that which they value. The 3 adjectives that are absolutely consistent with who you really are, the 3 adjectives that are valued in the organization, where they intersect is how you must behave consistently if you want to train people to think about you in a certain way. It is simply consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. And my big aha happened 5 to 6 years into my career. I had a very senior managing director say to me, you know, you're smart, you work hard, but I don't think you're tough enough for this business. Now, my first reaction was, what is he smoking? You can call Carla Harris a lot of things, but ain't tough ain't one of them. But then I thought, maybe he's not pulling my leg. Suppose the rest of the organization doesn't think that I'm tough enough for this business. And as you might imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the last thing that you want to be thought of as a woman and a woman on Wall Street is not tough. And oh, by the way, authentically, that is who I am. So the fact that he was questioning whether or not I was tough enough was a wake-up call to me that the real Carla Harris was no longer walking into Morgan Stanley. Somewhere I'd lost my voice. Somewhere I'd lost my confidence, and it was creating a competitive disadvantage for me. So after I got that feedback, I said, I know what I'll do. For 90 days, I decided I would walk tough, talk tough, eat tough, drink tough, use tough in my language, because it's important that if you want to train people to think about you in a certain way, you must have consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. So I had a reputation of being very good at critiquing management presentations, so much so that before we would take a company on the road for a multi-billion-dollar IPO or a multi-$100-million common stock transaction, my colleagues would often ask me to come into the room, listen to that CEO's presentation, give that CEO some feedback, even when it wasn't my deal. So the next time someone asked me to do that, after I'd gotten that feedback, I said, wait a minute, tell me a little bit about this CEO. Is this guy sensitive? Does he have a thin skin? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings because you know I'm tough. And sure enough, in about 90 days, people started talking about me in that way, and it will work the same way for you. But it is imperative that you know the adjectives that are associated with success. So for example, if you're in a finance role, people better describe you as analytical, quantitative. If you're in a marketing role, they should say you are creative, out of the box thinker. If you're in a sales role, they should describe you as commercial, relationship oriented. And oh, by the way, every time you go into a new organization, you get a new assignment or you get a new boss, you should never assume that you know what success looks like. Because remember, what got you to that seat will not be the thing that will allow you to ascend from that seat. So you always want to take the time to have the conversation. What does success look like? And the conversation goes like this: Jim, what needs to happen in order for you to say I knocked the cover off the ball and the ball out of the park? If he says, Mary, you do the following 5 things, and I will consider that an out-of-the-box performance. Now, Mary, you know exactly what you're playing for. You know how to maximize your success in that seat. But more importantly, if he says, I don't know, Mary, you always do a good job. Just do what you always do. Mary, note to self, Houston, we have a problem. Because if Jim can't tell you what success looks like, you will never maximize your success in that seat, because success is always shifting. And that will make your performance vulnerable to outside influences on Jim. So if Jim can't tell you what success looks like, you should say, Jim, you're not sure what success looks like? I've been thinking about it. Give me 10 minutes. Let me walk you through it. You tell me what you like and what you don't like. Now, Mary, you know exactly what you're playing for. This is a critical point, ladies and gentlemen, that leads me to the second pearl. Everyone has been talking about this is a tough environment and a tough environment to get a job. The key to getting the job that you want, it's not about your prerequisite experience. There are very few jobs where your prerequisite experience is the dominant affirmative factor in your getting the job. The key to getting the job that you want is to understand what the buyer is really buying, which means you need to understand the key success factors of that role. When you understand the key success factors in that role, then you should tell your story through that lens. Almost every interview that I've ever had, and it would probably be the same way for you, when you walk into that interview or when you get into that Zoom environment, they're going to say, Michael, tell me about yourself. Michelle, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Immediately, when you start to tell your story, you use the adjectives that are associated with success for that role. So if I am interviewing for an investment banking job, I'm going to tell my story talking about my analytical skills, my quantitative skills, my attention to detail. That is what's valued, especially as an incoming associate. If I'm interviewing for a job at the New York Times, I'm going to talk about my resourcefulness. I'm going to talk about my writing skills. I'm going to talk about my relationship building skills, because I can get people to tell me things that they might not tell other people, which leads me to have a lead on a story and maybe get it to market before anyone else. So you should always understand what the key success factors are and demonstrate to the interviewer that you know what the key success factors are. And oh, by the way, it is consistent with the things that I've already done. Most people lose the job opportunity in that first interview because they fail to tell their story and fail to tell their story effectively. And that is also when you're coming into getting a job or when you're moving throughout an organization as you try to maximize your success. The other question that I often get from students is, wow, everybody has to apply online. How do you differentiate yourself? Well, there are a couple of things that I have to tell you in that front. The first, it's true that not everybody reads their snail mail anymore, but everybody reads a FedEx. So you should absolutely follow their instructions and apply online, but you should write an outstanding cover letter and send your resume error-free. And I say error-free because anytime you have a mistake on your resume or in your cover letter, and it's easy to do if you're doing a spell check and you're in a hurry, you know, T-O and T-O-O and T-W-O all sounds the same. But if you have any kind of error, they extrapolate that around your judgment, and you don't want to give it to them that easily. So send the FedEx, and you'll have two bites at the apple, because they'll open it and see that you've sent it overnight. Then they'll go to the computer and see if your name is there, and you will absolutely get a call. And most calls are happening this way or by the phone. And if it's by the phone, you want to make sure you have your narrative present and understand what the buyer is buying. The last point that I want to leave you with before we go to Q&A is the authenticity point. Because the other question that I get all the time is, how do I stand out? There is only one you, ladies and gentlemen. Your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. And when you're trying to speak or behave in a way that's inauthentic to who you really are, that's when you create the competitive disadvantage, because you're using valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to really hear what your internal client or your boss or your external client is saying, yet is not articulating. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to demonstrate that quick twitch response, and valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to co-create with that person on the other side of the conversation. As quiet as it's kept, ladies and gentlemen, most people are not comfortable in their own skin. So when they see someone who is comfortable and confident in their skin, they will gravitate towards you. They absolutely want some of that. If you get a job like mine, where your success depends upon your ability to successfully penetrate relationships, the easiest way to penetrate a relationship is to bring your authentic self to the table. When you bring your authentic self to the table, people will trust you. And trust is at the heart of any successful relationship. I'll tell you a quick story. As you heard from Faith, I am a singer. I have done 3 CDs, now 4. My 4th is just dropped. It's a Christmas CD. I've done 5 sold out concerts at Carnegie Hall, 2 at the Apollo. But when I started in this business of financial services and on Wall Street, I didn't want anybody to talk about the fact that I was a singer. I wanted to be known as a no-nonsense, hard-driving, analytical, quantitative investment banker. I'm not here to sing and dance, boys. Let's not get it twisted. No, until I saw the client reaction. Because of course, against my objections, my colleagues would take me into the room to pitch and say, oh, this is Carla Harris, our capital markets banker. But what you really ought to know about Carla, she's an amazing gospel singer. She sang at Carnegie Hall and Radio City, Lincoln Center, and I'm there rolling my eyes until I saw the client's reaction. Oh, you're a singer. Oh, I personally love to sing, but my family won't let me sing in the shower. And maybe you can talk to my daughter about how she differentiates herself and how she integrates her love of the arts and her academics. And there we were, having the 15-minute meeting before the meeting. Are you with me? The meeting before the meeting. So when I sat down to pitch, they heard me with a different ear. They saw me through a different lens because Carla Harris, the singer, was allowed to be in the room with Carla Harris, the banker. So I naturally differentiated myself from the other 5 bankers that would come in there and pitch that same IPO that afternoon. So now, whenever I go into a new situation, I bring Carla Harris, the investment banker. I bring Carla Harris, the prayer warrior, Carla Harris, the investment manager, Carla Harris, the singer, the writer, the speaker, the mother, the golfer, the football fan. I bring all those Carlas to the table because I don't know which Carla will be the one that will connect and allow me to own the relationship in a proprietary way. And ladies and gentlemen, those of you who will choose to be in a leadership seat, it is even more important that you bring your authentic self into any environment, because then you motivate and inspire those who are working with you. Notice I said with and not for, those who are working with you to bring their authentic selves to the table. And anytime any of us is in an environment where we can be who we really are, we always outperform. And that will now accrue to your status in the leadership seat. And as I close, I tell you that success does not just happen. You must be intentional. You must be intentional about your performance. Always create the report card where you can underpromise and overdeliver. It works every time. You must be intentional about your communications. You don't ask, you don't get. One person responsible for your career, and that's you. And you must be intentional about your relationships because you cannot do it alone. You will need somebody else's intellect, experience, or access to a network in order to maximize your success. If you'd like to maximize your success, you must both expect and strategize to win. And now I'm ready for this conversation, Faith.
That was excellent. Thank you, Carla. Girl, you just bring it on. And I'm so appreciative. So, as you talk about bringing your authentic self, right? And I would love for you to talk about hard and soft skills.
Yes.
Okay. Because you talked a lot about, okay, you need to understand what the buyer wants. And when you talk about your story, you align your own story with the adjectives that they want. But there's what I call the soft skill side, how you say it,
That's right.
when you say it, the tone and manner in which you say it.
That's right.
So can you address a little bit of that with, the students, because it's doing your homework,
That's right.
making sure you say all of those adjectives, but that how and the manner is just as important. Can you give a little bit of input in there?
Absolutely. So part of it, Faith, is being self-aware and understand who you really are and how you communicate best with people. The other piece is doing your homework. And, there's a lot of information out there now on everybody. So you can spend just a half an hour, even 15 or 20 minutes, if you know who you're going to interview with, and look them up so you can kind of get a sense of what they've done before. And if they've been in the media a lot, you can get a sense of what they said and what their quotes were. And you don't have to memorize all that, but you want to get a feeling for that person. And then you want to walk in being very comfortable with who you are, not trying to do anything to impress them, but bringing the best you. And you're right, you must be very sensitive to your audience, right? Listen to the questions that they ask you. Listen to how they ask you. And at a minimum, you want to make sure that you are offering your answer in a very clear manner and you're answering the question, and that you're doing it in a confident way, not arrogant, but confident. And we all know the difference between arrogance and confidence. And if you are not sure, then do a little extra homework with some people that you really trust and say, if they ask me this, here's how I'm going to answer, and get some market feedback. Everybody has someone that they can do some rehearsal with. I used to practice in the mirror, and I could hear myself, and I would ask myself, does that sound really confident? Does that sound like I know what I'm talking about? Will that lead me to ask the question lead them to ask me the question that I really want them to ask me? How can I change my words that will bring them along in the conversation that I want to have? Because you actually have control in that interview.
Excellent. So another question that has been asked is, as an African-American woman, and as you know, during this time of Black Lives Matter, and as we look for, as you're going into the job market as a student, what should the focus be? Because, there's a balance. Many corporations, many institutions say they want African-American talent, but they're not. Some are hiring and some are not. Mm-hmm. And then it's might be somewhat discouraging in terms of seeing the racism. So I'd love to get your thoughts in terms of, as people are having a voice during this time, how do you maximize it?
Yes. So let's talk about entering an organization, and let's talk about if you're already at the organization.
Okay.
So if you're entering the organization, one very important thing that I want to say, do not be confused that someone is hiring you just because you are of color or just because you are a woman. Trust me, none of these organizations need folks of color or women badly enough to just take anybody off the street. So don't think that you are a token or they're just hiring me because they need some, because that is going to cannibalize your excellence that you can offer. If you get the job, you're getting the job because they think you can make rain. So make rain. That is the only reason you're going to get the job. So let me be clear about that, because there are a lot of people that I think are falling into thinking that that's why they're being hired, and therefore they don't really have an opportunity or don't believe that they can bring their A game in that environment because they don't think that the company is serious. Now, if you are engaged in a conversation while you're interviewing about how you feel about this, I think you absolutely should be honest about it. But there are two words I'm going to tell you to keep in your head when you are talking. You want to be constructive and productive. Constructive and productive. So you should think to yourself that maybe this person is asking me these questions because they actually want a solution. They want a perspective. So right now, let me put myself in the seat of someone who is advising them around the things that they should do in order to emerge as a leader around this topic. So put yourself in that CEO seat so that you can shift the conversation. You don't have to get yourself in a situation where you're being mired down in a back and forth with somebody. The minute you get a question like that, you want to say, okay, they need some help. Let me help them, right? Now, that brings me to, if you are already in the organization. And Faith, I received a lot of phone calls from senior folks of color who frankly were angry because they're saying, I've been in this organization for 15 years. They never cared about my opinion before. Now they're asking me blah, blah, blah. I am not going to say blah, right? And the first thing that I said to them, do not let your anger blow your opportunity. You are correct. I know you're mad. I know you might not have felt as though you have been treated well, but the organization is looking for your help right now. Here's an opportunity to be constructive and productive and not only solve the problem for the today when the question is being asked, but put forth solutions that are going to be sustainable on the other side of this. We've seen a version of this movie before where people have been serious and then all of a sudden it dissipates. I happen to believe this time is different, but in the event that some of the intensity does go down, it goes from 10 to 5, you can put some things in place today because you have the power and the ability to do that with your voice. That's going to be long-term beneficial for everybody. So take it.
Awesome. So another question is, during the pandemic and looking for jobs and seeing that millions of jobs are being cut, we would love to hear your perspective, because you did talk to us a little bit earlier about what you're seeing in terms of a turnaround later next year. But what should students be doing now to look for internships, for jobs? how should they be working now in
Right.
terms of the future?
Yes. Do not be deterred by the headlines. There's no question. There are millions of people out of jobs. However, I would argue that there were a lot of jobs that should probably have been restructured pre-COVID. But when we are in a good economic environment, most companies have the attitude, it ain't broke, don't fix it, even though they should be innovating and they should be transforming their cultures. There are a lot of jobs, ladies and gentlemen, that will not come back, no question about it. But I could also argue that many of those jobs probably were already on the path to being eliminated. But I will say this, there are also millions of jobs that are going to be created for the 21st century, some of which we can't even articulate because the companies haven't even been created. Just think about it. You could not have said 18 years ago that you want to be the CMO of Facebook, or you wanted to be, the CFO of Instagram. These companies didn't even exist. So there are going to be a lot of companies created and a lot of roles in companies that already exist as companies try to figure out what they need to look like in order to be competitive on the other side of COVID. So I talk about in my book, Strategize to Win, about getting strategic skills that you can use across any industry. So you obviously want to get good presentation skills. You want to be able to sell your ideas. You want to have good analytical and quantitative skills. You want to have good project management skills and organizational skills. Basic skills that you can use, whether it's in finance, it's in entertainment, it's in operations, but you want to get basic skills that are transferable across all industries. And then as you think about jobs, be very focused on the content, not the job. And what do I mean by that? People used to say to me all the time, I want to be an M&A. I want to be an M&A because I want to learn how to value companies. Well, that's one role. But if you say, I really want a job where my content is around valuing companies, now you've just multiplied your opportunities fourfold. In M&A, yeah, you value companies. Sell-side research, you value companies. Credit research, you value companies. And certain types of derivative trades or research, you value companies. So now if you say the content, I want to learn how to value companies, there's 4 roles. They're going to teach you how to do that as opposed to being so focused and saying, I want an M&A job. So I would urge students to think about what you want to do. What's the content? What do you want to learn? What kind of experiences you want to have? And now think of all the different roles that will allow you to touch that content. You will amplify your opportunities.
That is awesome, Carla. And even when I teach my class, I created my job at Wyndham Worldwide. They did not have a chief sustainability officer, and I created it. But it came from the content of doing new product development, new business development, and being able to leverage that to start a new business. So you're absolutely right. We do not know what the next 10 years, 15 years in the jobs are going to be. Excellent, excellent point. So the other thing was understanding what the buyer wants. And you recently have been put on the Walmart board.
Yes.
That is, people say that that's a very different experience to be on a board of directorship.
Yeah.
And of course, being a woman, an African-American woman, what was the process and what is one of the most surprising things as a board of director that you've experienced?
Yes, I will tell you that as a member of the board, I certainly thought that there were places that I could be value add, but I didn't realize the breadth of experience that I am bringing to the table actually allows me to be impactful in a number of spaces. I can obviously be impactful around diversity and inclusion strategies, around HR, around people, about how to think about that from a strategic standpoint. Because I've taken so many companies public, I understand how the street thinks. So when it comes to telling a narrative, in the marketplace, I can be helpful there. I obviously can be helpful around capital markets issues. So that's been the most surprising thing, that there's so many ways that you can have an impact and make a difference if you're sitting in that board seat. I will tell you that the process is not dissimilar from the process that the students will have to go through to get a job. by the time you are approached by a company to be a member of their board, they've already done their homework on you. They obviously have copies of your resume. They've seen everything on you that's out in the public domain. They've already, looked at all of your social media accounts to make sure that you're not going to embarrass them around anything. And so by the time they're talking to you, they're actually talking about the third thing, Faith, that I think in any interview people care about. It's the can do, can you do the job? The will do, what's your attitude around it, and the fit. And I talk about that in Strategize to Win. So by the time you're having an interview with the other board members or the CEO, they're assessing the fit. Will you fit with the culture of the 12 or 13 or 15 or 20 or 8 people that are already on that board? Are you going to be constructive and productive? Or are you going to be argumentative or the disruptive person all the time, taking the conversation off track? Are you results-oriented, solution-oriented? Are you collaborative? So these are adjectives, and that's why I'm using these words that are associated with somebody who's going to be a successful board member. So by the time you get to the interview stage, it's all about fit.
And so does fit, this is what I've heard before, may be done on the golf course. You play golf. And you found that a lot of deals, particularly in the financial industry, was done on the golf course.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that? I
Yes.
know you love golf, so it's authentic to you. Other CEOs play tennis, like Kenneth Chenault. I know he said, look, I'm not a golfer, but I'll play tennis. So, that I know there are a lot of deals done on the golf course. I know that's probably a surprising question, but it's true. I know it's true.
So the thing to remember, especially for the students, is that, quote, doing deals, collaborations, partnerships, it all comes down to relationships. And one of the reasons that so many deals are done on the tennis court or on the golf course is because that is a place where people build relationships. And, I'm smiling when you ask me that question, Faith, because I grew up in the golf capital of the country. I grew up in Florida, never touched a club, or had never been to a club. But I'll tell you what motivated me to play. Remember, I started in the business in the late 80s. So it was golf and ski were what all the bankers did. And I'm from Florida, so I definitely didn't ski, right? And I remember being on the capital markets desk, and every Thursday or Friday, my boss at the time was a huge golfer. All the other young associates who were my contemporaries would go out to play golf with him. And I was left on the desk, and I was the one answering the phones. And after a few Fridays, I was like, oh, no, this dog will not hunt. I'm going to learn how to play. Now, interestingly enough, it was a very smart move, because not only did my boss love playing golf, he loved to talk about golf, and he loved to mentor people who wanted to play. So we ended up having great conversations about I should go to that golf school, or I should try that golf school, and what'll happen if I do that one. And that's how I got into the game. And lo and behold, I love it. Now, here's the lesson that I learned. Most people who talk a big game about golf, they don't play that well, right? And so you end up going out there, you're like, oh gosh, I really don't play that well. And, as I like to say, and forgive me, gentlemen, the boys hit it. They hit it long and wrong. It's in the woods over here. It's in the water. And I used to be so consumed with those beautiful golf shots going up in the air. If you can hit a line drive and hit it 100 yards, you're competitive.
Another question we have is a lot of our students here are commuters, and they work, they have families, they and are getting their, a BA, their MBA, their first generation. And how do you balance, right? Because you have 2 daughters, you're on the board of directors, you work for a company, you work with all these nonprofit organizations, and time management is huge.
Yes.
And being able to prioritize.
Yes.
So if you can talk a little bit about that, because, I am so proud of our students and how they're, doing what they're doing during this time, during this challenging time. If you can talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure everybody's like, how does she do it all?
Well, I'll tell you, I am maniacal about my calendar, and I try to use every moment that I can. And I'm a list girl. I mean, you should see my list every day. And that is actually what keeps me focused, because we have so many distractions now with email and other things. And especially now that you're home with your kids. And earlier in the year, we were actually homeschooling as well. So for me, I just try to make sure that I put everything down on the list and then I prioritize. And when I have a lot going on, i.e., I have Carla Harris, the vice chairman at Morgan Stanley. I have Carla Harris, the singer that's getting ready for a concert. I have Carla Harris, the philanthropist and the person that is involved in all of these different activities. And then I have Carla Harris, the family woman, the wife and the mother of two. And I'll write down everything that's in those quadrants. And then I'll say, okay, what has to get done today? What is going to be the thing that actually makes me feel great about how I manage this day? I.e., what does success look like today, Carla? And the reason that I have the list is that you know as well as I do, Faith, that things pop up that were not on your list. And when those things pop up, I put them on the list so that I have the ability to scratch them off the list and have this feeling of accomplishment. And sure, there are days when there's a lot that's on the list today, goes on to the list the next day. But for me, I get that feeling of accomplishment, knowing that I have that balance. And that is what balance is all about, because work is not always going to go well and family is not going to always go well. But having the thing in the day that really brings you joy is what balance is all about. And I've been looking forward to this conversation. And that was a thing that drove me through today. And I have literally been back to back since 8 o'clock this morning, but I was looking forward to this. And so that was the thing that actually gave me fuel all day to knock down all those things that were on the calendar. And the last thing I'm going to say is don't be shy about getting people to help you. If you are
really good point.
Yeah, if you're commuting back and forth and you have somebody that can help you with respect to looking after your kids or help you with respect to looking after your parents, then, all of that is a part of your village and you don't have to touch it in order to influence it. As long as it's getting done and it's getting done, pretty close to the way you'd like to get it done, then check. But so often as type A personalities, we think that nobody can do it the way that we can do it. And you cannot let perfect be the enemy of good, as the old saying goes. You got to make sure that if people are available to help you, use them.
That's awesome. And then also, I just want to say that I'm proud of you and your marriage to Victor, because it's funny, when I was at Wyndham and, traveling and with the children, I could not have done what I did without my husband, Gary. And so I truly believe in the foundation of relationships. Marriage, a strong marriage, is critical, helps you keep that balance, and it's a partnership.
Yes.
And whatever your partnership looks like, whether it's an extended family, whether it's your church, you know what I mean? Mother, sisters, cousins, I found that to be critical. And so, when I look at you, Carla, that to me has been one of the foundations for you that I think has really absolutely, and I know for me, I would always say I could not do what I do without my husband.
Yes, I would agree. Having a good partner and just a good support system.
Yes,
right?
support system is critical, right? You have a very strong support system. Your church, I know, is just, they wrap your arms around each other. You support each other for many, many years. Whatever that looks like for you in terms of your support system is important during these times.
That's right. That's right. And even being there for other people can actually inspire and motivate you. You may not have somebody that you feel like that you can lean on right now, but if you're that person that somebody else can lean on, I got to tell you, it's going to come back to you in ways that you never expected. So put yourself in that position for sure.
Absolutely. So I think we're on to the Q&A section, right?
Okay. Looks like we got a few.
I know we got a few. So I'm going to turn it over to who's doing the Q&A. Is that going to be Betsy?
Faith
or Nicole?
It's Nicole here, but I actually thought you were going to continue, but it's your choice. If you'd like, we could certainly share some of these questions that are here right now.
Okay. Well, you know what? I can absolutely, do some of these questions. So one of the questions, which I think is excellent, is did you ever deal with imposter syndrome? What would you recommend to people who deal with it in the corporate world?
Yes. Thank you so much for that question, because I will tell you that's one of the things that motivated me to write the book that I'm working on now, because I kept getting that question so much in 2018 and 2019. And I was like, why is this question coming up? It was the question 30 years ago when I came out of business school. How can it be back? And I think it's because my generation didn't do a good enough job saying to the generation behind us that there's no need for you to have an imposter syndrome. As I said before, there's no company that's going to hire you just because you are a woman or just because you're a person of color. If they hired you, they see that you have the goods to be successful in that role. So you should never doubt whether or not you will be able to knock the cover off the ball and the ball out of the park. Sure, there are going to be things that you've never done before, but all you need to do is to look at your track record. You have a successful track record of first. You gave a presentation for the first time. You wrote a 20-page paper for the first time. You rode a bike for the first time. Whatever it is, you have a successful track record of first. Now you need to say to yourself, if I did it before, I'll be able to do it again. And if you're not convinced that that's how you ought to think about it, now I'm going to ask you, have you ever failed at anything in your life? Have you ever been disappointed? Answer is probably yes if you're over the age of 21. Well, guess what? You live to tell it. So been there, done that, got the t-shirt. It won't be the first time, it won't be the last time. So if the worst that can happen is that you fail at this thing, you still will have learned something that you can invest in your next try, and that will impact your next success. So no need to have the imposter syndrome. If you have been invited into the room, you belong in that room, and you have an opportunity and a responsibility to exercise your voice.
That's great. So in terms of social media today, right? And I talk to my students all the time. I'm like, your social media will be evaluated all the time.
That's right.
And a very good question. How do you be authentic in social media and balance that with your career?
Yes,
That's
a good question, but I have to tell you, I am of the opinion, I'm probably more conservative than most on this one, because it is social media and because it will always be watched. As you said, Faith, people will look at it as part of the evaluative equation in bringing you on board. I think you need to be very careful about how you curate it, right? You can be authentic and not show yourself with a beer kind of hanging out like that. You know, you can be authentic and take a picture of you at the football game, but I think you want to be careful that pictures of you can have narratives of their own, narratives that you cannot control when somebody looks at the picture. So I think having a measure of authenticity is about thinking about, well, you know, what do I want to portray? And is it a necessity that you show yourself in all the skin on the beach? Do you really need to do that? And for what reason? Or can you just show you on the lovely beach? So I just think you got to be careful when you're thinking about social media and be authentic about it and say, I'm willing to take the consequences if somebody misconstrues that I posted this thing, or actually, I don't want to have an adverse outcome because somebody misconstrued a picture of me in a bikini or a picture of me with a glass of wine and a beer.
another question here is developing mentors and sponsors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is critical. And I know you even talk about it in your book. And as students are looking at developing their careers, talk a little bit about that process and how you cultivate and what is the right mentor or sponsor.
Yes.
And it doesn't always just happen. You're like, I know a lot of organizations try to assign people. Yeah. Talk about that too. Does that work? Does it not work? Because that's part of a diversity and inclusion strategy. And I know a lot of people, and you know, as you've worked in your company and at Walmart, some people believe in that and some people do not.
Right. So let me give you the definition between the mentor and the sponsor, and I'll talk about how you get one, and I'll give you my views on whether or not the formal mentoring programs work. So the mentor is the person that you can tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. So by definition, it needs to be somebody that you know, because this is the person that you will share the intimate details of your career with, your fears, your concerns, your mistakes, your triumphs, your strategies. I'm in this box. I want to be in this box. Who do I work and how do I get there? And a mentor's job is to give you tailored advice. tailored specifically to you and to your career aspirations. If I know Radia and I know United, and they both want to become managing directors, and I'm a good mentor, I will give them two different strategies because they are two different women. And my job is to give them tailored advice that they can successfully execute. Now, your mentor does not need to be within your organization, nor do they need to look like you. They just need to understand the context that you are working in order to give you tailored advice that you can successfully execute. But here's the deal, Faith. You can survive a very long time in your career without a mentor, in my view, but you cannot ascend in any organization without the sponsor. The sponsor is the most important of all of the relationships that you will have in your career. And the sponsor must be within your organization. And I said the mentor was the person you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. The sponsor is not the person you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. The sponsor is the person that you want focused on the good, and the good, because this is the person that is carrying your paper into the room. This is the person that behind closed doors will argue passionately on your behalf as to why you should get the great bonus, why you should get the promotion, why you should get the next great opportunity. Make no mistake, the sponsor is the one spending their valuable political and social capital on you. Now, how do you get a sponsor? Nirvana is when somebody comes into the organization or you come into the organization and they say, you know what, Faith, I'm going to make it happen for you. I'm going to make sure you are successful. But for many of us on this call, it doesn't happen that easily. Sometimes you must exercise your power and ask for a sponsor. So what's the profile of a good sponsor? The sponsor must be within your organization. They must have visibility to your work, because remember, they're behind closed doors arguing on your behalf. So people need to know that they have either worked with you or they have a direct line of sight to your work, because if they don't, they'll have no credibility behind closed doors. So they need to be within your organization, have a direct line of sight to your work. Number two, they need to have a seat at the decision-making table. And number three, they need to have some juice or power in that organization. So I tell people, study your organization for 2 weeks and figure out who are the people that have seats at the table. And if you don't know, it's as simple as asking somebody. So look at who has seats at the table. Then think about who among those folks that have seats at the table, who has some kind of visibility into your work. Hopefully it's 2 to 3 people. And then you can intentionally start to build relationships with those people. And you know the way to build relationships is just frequency of touch. Frequency of touch. Just think about the people who are close to you in your life now. How did they get to be your friends? Maybe you're econ major together. You always go to class together. Or maybe you're in a study group together. Or maybe you used to always go to the social events together. The more you interacted, the more you had a relationship. It's the same way with somebody that you're trying to build a sponsored relationship with. Now, formal mentoring programs. I'm not a fan that they work.
Interesting.
Okay. And here's why. The word mentor is loaded for anybody. And you and I may have very different views of what we're supposed to get out of this relationship. So if I am assigned to Faith, Faith doesn't know me that well. So she's not going to give me the good, the bad, and the ugly on Jordan. She might say, oh, she might tell Jordan exactly what I said. So I'm going to be careful. As the mentee, I sense that you're not giving me the good, the bad, and the ugly. So right there, there's an impairment of trust that we haven't even gotten started. Right? So it's the rare case that these formal mentoring programs work. So what I advise companies is, if you want a mentoring program, please call it something else. Don't call it a mentoring program. But if you must call it a mentoring program, be very clear on what the mentor will offer and what the mentee can expect to receive, so that there can be alignment of expectations. Then you have a shot that it might work. And I'm sorry, one last point, Faith. People should not overlook peer mentors. Sometimes your peers can be your best mentors. The peers that I have kept, the mentors that I've kept for a long time, one is a senior African-American woman in a completely different business. And she's been a great mentor to me for 30 years. And the other two have been peers. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that when I speak to them, they have one agenda item, and that's me. So you must be clear that your mentor has your best interests at heart if you're going to bother to call them a mentor.
That's excellent. And you mentioned the word power. And, there's all kinds of associations with how do you get power in an organization? When you become a leader, you wield power. So we have students here who are going to start on the journey, or maybe they are in some companies now and they're working, and you develop influence and build power over the years. Give some advice in this area, because how you do that and how the impact it can have in your career is significant. And I think it's something that we should talk probably more openly about in terms of management. But you have power at all levels. You do not have to be the CEO to have power. I want to tell you, our CEO, that administrative executive assistant, had power. She had power. She could get you on his calendar or take you off.
That's
I'm
exactly
telling
right.
you. So please talk a little bit about power in an organization.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that question. You can lead from any seat. Let me say that.
That's
Okay.
important.
You can lead from any seat. And you're absolutely right. Power is about being able to get things done. And do not underestimate the power that you have as somebody who's just walking in the door. You're brand spanking new and you just got your ID. But by virtue of the fact that that company has now said you are a part of this family, you have a business card like anybody else, you have the ability to be able to get things done. You can start right away as a first year associate, start to recruit the next class, for example. You have the opportunity to be able to use your skills and whatever you're working on to help somebody else further whatever they're doing. That's power. The easiest way to get power, in my view, is to actually give it away. The more you empower other people or underscore what other folks are doing, the more powerful you will become. So I tell people, don't have a closed door mentality, or this is mine, or I'm not going to share that. The more collaborative you are, the more open you are, and the more you're the person that's telling the story. I'm very liberal with the we pronoun. Look at what the team did. Look at what we did. And by virtue of the fact that I'm telling the story, there's an inordinate amount of value that's ascribed to me because I'm the one that's delivering the narrative. So power is really important, and you get it by delivering, and you get it also by exercising your voice, and you get it by empowering other people.
Excellent. And so as we wrap this up, I would love for you to just, as students are on their journey, I'm so proud of our Montclair State students at the Feliciano Business School. I see an incredible work ethic because I know how hard it is. You're from Jacksonville. I grew up in Tacoma, Washington. I used to help my mother clean houses. And then to know that where they are today and where they can be is really up to them. And so what last piece of advice you'd like to give to them? Because I feel like you understand their story. You work extremely hard, but you're also generous with your time, taking the time now to talk to them today, which to me is so important in terms of giving back. So what last words of pearls of wisdom would you like to give?
Yeah, I'll tell you the number one thing that I would have said to my 25-year-old self, which was last week, sorry, is own your power. When I was sitting in your seat as a student, I really didn't understand how powerful I was just in being a student, and that I had the ability to actually drive my own future. And chaos breeds opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a chaotic world. You have the opportunity to imagine and frankly reimagine your future, and do not underestimate the power of your voice. Do not underestimate the investment that you have made in yourself by being a Montclair State student. Do not underestimate how impactful you can be, especially when people are soliciting your voice. What do you think about this? How would you handle that? Always give every opportunity. Remember that when you're interacting with someone, every one of those opportunities, somebody is consuming you. How do you want them to consume you? How do you want that person that's having an interaction with you right now to walk away from that experience? Enriched, encouraged, better for having an interaction with you? Be intentional about that. And that will also grow your power. Own it. You have it.
Thank you so much. This has been an incredible, incredible opportunity to talk with you. I am so sure the students, we are going to just get incredible feedback, but more importantly, I think it's the opportunity to learn. And just really, it has been an amazing opportunity. Thank you, Carla.
It's been my
Um,
honor and privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just really am very happy to be here, to be able to help the students, to be able to work with this incredible school, and be a part of their journey. And you're right, the pandemic is an opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, my husband's boss said, do not let a good crisis go
Go to
to
waste.
waste. Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
He's
Take
right.
the opportunity to see what you can do, because those who take advantage of it are going to leapfrog those who do not. So thank you. And I guess that's it. Good
But
night,
Faith-
and we will continue. And I think go ahead, Nicole. I know there's a couple
Yeah.
of things that we wanted to share at
Yeah,
the end
a
here.
little bit of housekeeping we have to do here. I'm just floored. Wow. Not only, Carla, have you did an impressive job. Faith, you just worked it with Carla. We really appreciate both of you. We really could have spent the entire evening listening to you. I think we have not lost anybody in this session here. I'm going to ask Yonita to go put on the screen a slide that lists both your blog and also a reference to your holiday video. I believe you have your both your reference in to your books and also to your videos through your blog as well. And please, everyone, go ahead and check that out. I can't say enough. And we did record your session, and we are so excited to probably play and replay this as well, because you really impress all of us at every level. So again, thank you, and have a great
And the
night.
video, just so that everyone know, is If Christmas Was the Way I Dream.
Yes.
It's a single off of her new CD, holiday CD. And the blog, you can also buy Carla's book, Pearls of Wisdom. So please, if you want to learn more and have be uplifted by her song, go here.
Awesome. Thank you, and thank you for sharing your pearls of wisdom. Really quite impressive. Loving it. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Have a great
Thank
night,
you, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Stay safe and stay well.